staff.
Why don't I do the script and get it started, and then we can talk about the agenda. So this is Arthur Gasparo of the Environmental Subcommittee meeting being held on June 14th at 1 o'clock. And I will start off to read the script for remotely conducted open meetings. As a preliminary matter, this is Arthur Gasparo, Vice Chairman of the Nantucket Airport Commission. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mr. Buscarin?
Here.
Ms. Topham?
Here.
And staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mr. Rafter? Tom, you there?
Oh, he said he's having audio issues. He said here.
I could read his lips. He said yes.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we're good now. Thank you. Mr. Carberg?
Here.
Sylvia?
Here.
Ms. Perales?
Here.
And anticipated speaker on the agenda. There are no anticipated speakers on the agenda. Good afternoon. This is an open meeting of the Environmental Subcommittee of the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive orders, March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. This order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so the public can follow along with deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission Environmental Subcommittee is convening by video conference via the Zoom app. It will be aired at a later time on the Town of Nantucket YouTube channel. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. All attendees have participated by video conference accordingly. Please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Meeting materials, all supporting materials that are provided to members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along with the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. We're now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for the effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to unmute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself for items with public comment. Public comment will be taken at the end of the meeting. Members of the public will be asked to raise their hand as a visual cue to the chair if they would like to make a comment. One at a time, the members public will be called and will address any questions or comments through the chair. Finally, each vote taken at this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. With that, we'll move on to the agenda.
I can share my screen if you like.
Sure, I got it on the other screen too. So I think the first item is, as being stated in the statement I just read, the meeting is being both audio and video recorded. Given Mr. Buscarin's time limit, I would open up to discussion if either staff or Tony, if you feel that you would like to take any of these items out of order in terms of that you would feel that you would prioritize participation in.
No, let's just go straight down the list. That's okay.
Okay. So we'll move on to the noise abatement discussion and ground noise program elements. I believe it was like Mr. Carberg, did you prepare this document that was in our packet?
Yes, so thank you, Arthur. What I have for you is really just a rough set of notes put down, maybe for the purposes of guiding a discussion or introducing some of some of the bullets, but what I took away from previous discussion at the commission meeting was that the interest was to create a ground noise program or outline elements for a ground noise program similar to what we already have in place for air noise. And the goal for any good policy, I think, is to devise the initial strategies and then the tactics around those strategies. So I've just listed for my own purpose, policy that's likely going to be transparent, socially considerate, economically viable, consistent with environmental goals, and technically accurate. And that when we do get down into tactics from a staff version or from a staff perspective, we do a lot internally now with the SMART goal system and management by objectives. So we look forward, to goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, and realistic, and time dependent. Some of the items that I just offered for existing starting points are data sources that we've already developed and provided. Some of them we update fairly regularly on already, and those are appended in the packet. And that's our noise complaint database, our APU log, a duration survey, the South Apron technical noise report put forth by the consultant, and information in the environmental assessments, environmental impact report. And for the sub bullets, Arthur, I can cover these all four at once and we can go back to them, or I can take them one at a time, whatever your preference would be.
I'd say why don't we just go through them all and then we'll go back and see which ones we want to tackle.
Great. So one item that came out from the beginning was public meeting planning. I think we would have major program elements developed and plans for deliverables before we would schedule a meeting. But one of the items I think staff would look for is direction on soliciting and integrating public comments into the program versus managing their expectations. I think there's still a give and take that goes on between the public, between trying to meet their needs, answer the questions, but making sure that there's an understanding, there's a limit to what airport staff can influence and the amounts and types of changes that are within our sphere to bring about. And then information on the proposed format. Is this something we would bring to a already posted meeting? Bring into a newly posted meeting, a subcommittee meeting, integrate into an existing meeting, etc. Another item that we have is development of a south ramp extension operations policy. This would be to identify sort of the airport policy level considerations for that ramp that may include things like signage, operating restrictions, who gets parked, how they're parked and positioned, etc. So we would want to identify, at least initially, the level of documents we're considering. Is this a commission policy? Is this an internal SOP? We use a format called ASI's, Airport Standard Instructions, or another format, but the appropriate level under consideration there. And then, at least identify the important policy items that any policy should address, whether we're addressing one or all of noise practices, operating standards, equipment and resources, etc. Signage monitoring. Signage was specifically mentioned. I expanded it to include monitoring and other. One of the items that I'd be interested in hearing from you and Tony especially is what's the role of prescriptive signage versus advisory signage? Is it APUs are a X minute max, or please beware of your surroundings, as two examples on either end of that spectrum. When I mention what are the desired performance standards, I think I was going to link this back to the SMART goals. What are the attainable, realistic, measurable items that we link back to a performance standard? So propose, one of the items we should consider fairly early on is is there going to be a role of an outside consultant, especially when we look at developing or implementing a monitoring program, whether it's any role for a consultant, if there's a role for the consultant in performing that monitoring program or helping us determine which monitoring elements the airport should then monitor internally. And then implementation that I mentioned, we're a believer in the SMART goal-driven format, and we also always eye implementation for alignment with our budget items and our budget cycle, whether they're large or small items. We do like to just make sure they're integrated into our regular process. I think that would, other than the resources, yeah, that concludes my pre-populated noise notes.
Thank you. Tom, do you have anything you want to add to that, or do you want Tony and I just sort of bounce it around?
No, I think Noah hit on all the key points. Just like to hear some feedback on direction on some of these, that's all.
Tony, you want to go or you want me to go? You're muted, Tony.
Yes, I think my only comment is that we don't have any fining authority as the airport on noise. I think we can advise, suggest, request, and I think we should have as much signage as we can showing our concern for noise around the airport. But essentially, we don't have any fining capability or enforcement capability that I'm aware of. So I think it's great to have as many signs posted about our concern about noise, and that's probably the limit of our authority. That's about all I have to say.
Tom, is there any way, even if it's not a fine, is there any other mechanism by which long-term operations on the ground could be discouraged?
That are something that we could enforce. I'm not aware of any. I think it's encouragement more than enforcement. We get into a slippery slope if we try to establish noise regulations absent FAA and things. So now I thought I saw on the agenda that we had something discussed too, that the FAA was working on some ground noise studies or something. Is that correct, Noah?
Was that the last page for the grant?
Yeah, Arthur, it's a grant opportunity. Generally, I have to bring up my notes to speak more to it, but it's not a noise study specifically.
No, I thought you had commented previously on an effort that is somewhere with regard to ground noise on a federal level or somewhere. I thought there was something being done about ground noise. Any
Sorry,
case, until there's legislation that we can enforce, the best we can do is encourage it. If we start penalizing people, they're going to be filing Part 13 complaints, and justifiably so.
Yeah, it's the item I keep coming back to, Arthur, that it's the ground noise, the ground side noise, the ground side ground noise impacts at Nantucket they're related to airside impacts. They're related to the capacity of the national air traffic system. They're especially related to congestion and slot limitations in some of the Metro New York airports, which make up a bulk of our market. It's not an immediate one, but it's, I don't want to say air traffic reform, because broadly that means a whole slew of items, some of which I think are good and some of which are bad. But it's reform of the system and the routing techniques that might allow more direct sort of curved approaches from airport to airport instead of using the existing waypoint to waypoint vectoring that pilots do under IFR. I'm sure Tony, as the pilot here, is more familiar with those.
So, thank you. If I may, I think that we're focusing a lot on ground noise, but I think just as important is air quality. And I'm wondering if, as related to that, we're talking about, specifically to idling vehicles and how under either current mass regulations, as had been noted by the consultants in the EAEIR, that I think it's 310 CMR 07, there is a set of regulations. And again, I know we've had some brief conversation about whether there would be any teeth to that or not. But I do see this as both hand in hand, that we shouldn't just look at it from a noise perspective, but there's I think also a very important, especially to Nantucket, air quality piece of this, where, I completely understand and support the need to have both, APUs and engines running, or an airport operating completely. I think we're trying to look at, or I would be trying to hopefully look at more of the outlier operations, things that are starting to go, say in excess of a certain amount of time, like you have the current policy at 15 minutes, but understanding there needs, some of the larger aircraft now in their systems, it just doesn't work. But then I also see in the log, you've got these extremes of, some of them over an hour. One of them I think was even 2.5. And I'm sure that's your even further outlier. But, having a discussion that looks at how might we be able to curb the worst of it, perhaps. And I think that, when I read the database that's included further in the packet, I think we've already gone a long way from the discussions that, just having that in place as a progression from where we were even a few years ago. So keeping that up, and the fact that the staff is aware that the commission is discussing that as an item, that's part of, I think, what I was thinking about for, perhaps coming out of this process, a more codified procedure that sets forth, and maybe this is already in place and it's internal and, I'm not aware of it, but, what are the expectations, understanding same limitations on staff and time. And as I've mentioned before, I also understand, there are simply times that you would not be able to, due to the number of operations, directly get at this issue. But then there are perhaps, shoulder season or times where, there is one aircraft sitting out there for a longer period of time, or, and specifically, that could be in your later night and earlier morning hours, understanding that, we can't curb those operations at any hours for the airport. However, I think it's easier for the staff to take notice when they're during those hours when there are much less operations happening. And those are the ones that I think could have the greatest good, cause for sort of the community. If we're going to pick and choose where you can put your, efforts and what is manageable, how do we look at how that can maybe, happen? And, is there a policy that can come out of this process that even helps to, say, okay, I know it seemed like the report, everything was a first warning, but actually, is there a database? Does that help you to understand, either repeat offenders, or is there a situation, for example, if it's, late night, early morning, and there's a single operator out there that they get a follow-up warning and that gets noted? And is there, like you gave them a warning at a half an hour and at 60 minutes, they're still going. Is that something that's worth and makes a difference? I would think so. And again, I don't know that it's anything that we can really find. And so it's trying to, I think, show the operator that it matters, and that there's somebody taking notice of that. Is sort of where I was coming at from this. The emissions, I'm not so sure, how you tie that back to this as well. But, I imagine, to the last point, that we, in understanding our budget, we don't, and all the other strains on the money that's being spent for PFAS and environmental and consultants, there's not a lot that might be there. But with your current consultants, our current consultants who are, somewhat up to speed on a lot of this from the recent environmental report, is there a small scale type effort that they might be able to help in this? Is something else that I just want to kind of throw out there for discussion, and understanding your staff has limited time. So, do you balance that, it's worth having consultants that have recently been dealing and working on all of this with the models and for a certain number of hours could perhaps help to formulate a policy. So that was kind of my thinking, and same with the signage. Perhaps maybe it could just be staff driven, but perhaps the consultants, you could help, formulate both improve or different language. Maybe the language is fine, but maybe the language could be updated just a little bit more, perhaps, by referencing like the CMR. I think it already says per policy of the commission, and then maybe we could look at a little bit better as to, Tony's point, the more signs, where are they located? Is there an outreach program? I know we've talked a lot about the reaching the folks in the back of the aircraft and the brochures, but are we sure that, we are effectively, reaching the, both, I think, the operators, and the other piece of it is, I think there is a certain percentage of these who are both repeat operators as well as part of, say, a corporate entity. And there's a handful of those. So is there a way that, we could somehow reach out to a greater share through a more limited means, right? So if you know that you're going to, maybe you miss somebody who has only comes in here once and left once, versus the folks that maybe have a seasonal home here or whatnot and are your regulars, so to speak, or as well reaching out to contacts at the larger commercial private operators, the net jets, the exec jets, and that sort of thing. So those were all just kind of ideas that I didn't want to clutter up a commission meeting, and I thought that it might be helpful to put on the table now. And then finally, I'm with you completely on the using the SMART system, and how do we establish benchmarks to understand that this isn't just a subjective, that Gasparo heard this, or a particular, one other person heard that, versus having a system that says, in fact, yes, there was, an operator that ran for an extended period of time at a certain time, or no, as a matter of fact, that might have, it's kind of like with speeding, and I deal with traffic safety a lot of times folks think that people are going faster than they're going. And I think there could be a piece of that too, associated with this, that when you have the data that shows, well, in fact, yeah, they might have exceeded a 15-minute policy, but it was it was 28 minutes and they were in and out of here and did what they needed to do. And that was a best management practice, what needs to be done. So I was wondering along those lines, if we should be thinking about, some kind of a not overly complex, and this is where a consultant might help, a noise monitoring base station for the ground noise, where you are able to actually, capture that, and then understand that during the busiest periods, that might not differentiate. It just might not do you really all that much good, because there's going to be overlapping and you're not going to identify. But at 11:30 at night, and there was one operator, and the station picks up that there was this, runtime of 1 hour and 30 minutes or something, then it's been documented. And from my sort of quick search around and looking, I don't think in the terms of overall cost and expense, I think that the technology has come a long way, and that maybe there's something that could be done there. And perhaps it goes somewhere between the, at the end of the apron even, so that you're not picking up all, I don't know. I think that's where a consultant would have to sort of help us on something like that. So those were some of the thoughts that I had.
Yeah, Tony Buscarin. I wouldn't mind asking our consultants if they have any good advice about that. I think it's very difficult to limit noise much at the airport by the airport. I think if we have signs around and pilots are aware of it and we have handouts, that's probably the best we can do. Obviously, I think our only matter of correcting any of this is jawboning them, calling them up and say, listen, you were operating at 11:30 and the APU was running for an hour and a half. I think that's about the best we can do. Again, I would ask our consultants what they can do about that. But since we have no enforcement authority, I think the best we can do is put up signs and jawbone people who don't comply with what we'd like to have. I think that's the best we can do. I'm very sensitive to how much money we're spending on consultants. And I wouldn't want to go on a wild goose chase in an area where we have no enforcement authority at all.
If I may, to those points as well, Arthur, I understand, and our best return on investment is probably, the late night excessive, but I've got to caution everyone that we are having a challenge meeting our core capabilities right now. We're shorthanded in staff. We are running numbers beyond anything we've seen in the past 10 years. And we have issues. The fuel farm broke down this morning. We got to get that repaired immediately. We have major, I can't get into some of the details, but we have some major issues that we're dealing with. And we will do our best with this. And I think it's a good idea to formulate some guidelines, but I have to advise that when it comes to enforcement and taking the action, we have other priorities that right now are much higher than this.
I understand. And I didn't really suggest, actual any kind of a penalty system, for understanding that in our discussions. And as Tony has mentioned, there's limitations, right? As you know, we've had discussions in the past where I've asked about sliding scale or fees, and we've moved kind of to that. So that's why this discussion is very much along those lines of how can we do the best we can do with with essentially what we have before us, but make sure that we're trying, I guess, is sort of where, especially with the expansion, right? I think there's a piece of that as, that next piece happens. Can we start, the more we start now doing what the best we can do, and then when that expansion happens and it generates additional concern, then these things are in place as part of what I'm thinking of, that it's all part of kind of a cumulative planning process. So I hear you. I guess if I may then, Mike, sort of along the lines of next steps and the smart system is, and understanding the time of year and the priorities. This isn't something that, is a sort of a deliverable for next week, but is it something that, as it could be, start to be formulated, do we, how do we advance it, a little bit? And I think that I'm supportive of Tony's suggestion as well. If we could just start off with a discussion, most likely I would assume, but I defer to that, with Rich perhaps, who was so involved with some of the studies that we've already done, what might we be able to do? And, maybe there could be a review on at least signage, if nothing else, as well as the current wording and, outreach.
Yeah, I've got to leave in about 3 minutes. My suggestion, Arthur, is that we might put some of these issues over for the fall, when we have more time to deal with. It sounds to me like airport management needs to quickly turn their attention to some much more exigent circumstances. I'm very concerned about the noise and pollution aspects of this policy, but I think we would probably be better served by maybe delaying this meeting until the fall, maybe November, when things have quieted down a bit. It sounds like the staff is scrambling to try to get the fuel farm fixed right now, and that their time might be better used doing that. So I've got to leave in about 2 minutes, but I'd be happy to hear what Arthur has to say.
Yeah, I understand that, there's only so much that could be done heading into, July 4th, 2 weeks away as well. At the same time, I think that if there were any tweaks or small things that you had an idea or even a quick conversation, half hour worth of time sort of a thing with, the consultant, so that as we're heading into this season right now, and I drove by the ramp this weekend many times, and that's on June, 12th and 13th. So I get it, right? I don't know what's coming, and we don't have to go on a whole sidetrack about that, but I saw what was there.
All right, if I can, Arthur, for staff, Katie, could you please make sure this gets on as an agenda item on the monthly that we have with McFarland? That way, at least we'll get it teed up or get it on their radar and have them start looking at some of this.
And then, thank you. And then just to continue on, I have to think that, Tony, to your point as well, I mean, trying to plan a public meeting to get at all of this when we don't really have the background. I don't think that this, while yes, summer is a good time to capture the folks that are here, I'm not so sure how you really, the level of, to do that is going to take, it takes a lot of time and coordination, as well as either, some consultants. And it's, I think, most beneficial to have a meeting like that doesn't just go and say, hey, we want to hear what you have to say. It's, we've discussed this and have a few ideas. What do you think? So I'm not so sure that, that would really be the best thing to do right now.
I think a public meeting might be best done again in the fall. It sounds like our staff is scrambling right now to deal with some exigent circumstances. So I've got to jump off, but I appreciate and apologize for this departure. I just, this was sprung on me quickly and I had to respond. So I'm sorry to break off early, Arthur.
Okay, I understand, Tony. So the minutes, I guess the question is, at that point, then, is the subcommittee, by a subcommittee of one, is the meeting able to continue, or is this something that we essentially would just have to, I think it's probably best to continue to another time with Tony at the same time, unless there's something that, unless you feel like we should just kind of go over what we have. I'm happy to continue on.
I know, I don't know if Jeanette's a member of the committee or not, but she's here, so.
All right, well, why don't we just go over, at least for informational purposes, that the prep was put in there, and then Tony can always watch this, and then we can, I think we got through a lot of it. PFAS, again, I think, I don't want you to have to repeat what you're telling the commission anyway. And I don't think that really just the subcommittee is going to have too much to, it's really a commission level topic. But if there's something that you specifically want to go into.
I can provide 3 quick project updates. They're informational only. They don't require any subcommittee voting or anything like that. Just an update to the water main extension project. Bid opening is scheduled for July 2nd. The invitation for bids should be available to the public on June 18th, with a pre-bid conference on the 25th. Regarding the water service project, I spoke, actually I traded voicemails with Mr. Lasden at McFarland Johnson today. He believes that we may have contracts in hand from the excavation company very quickly. And I also spoke briefly with our consultant in Weston Solutions. They said the full data set has been received late last week from the outstanding samples. They're working to check all those numbers and develop the visualizations and then they will forward that on to me. I will forward it on to the commission, and we will post those documents, and we plan to have a presentation at the full commission meeting.
Thank you. Since you've received those, and since it's, I think, under this topic, one item was the watering of the statue park. And did those results come in perhaps at a level that you could resume or get that watering going? Because one of the things that I'm concerned with is that, obviously the airport has made a pretty significant investment over time to get that to where it is right now. And all of a sudden I wanted to mention it at the commission meeting, and then I get that you're juggling obviously environmental safety, but then it's also this well-used, well-developed, that you've put your guys take a lot of pride in that. I mean, without a doubt. And so I hate to see it just, have to be lost and destroyed, and then grass just doesn't come back if it hits a point of sort of no return. So I'm just wondering if you think we'd be able to do that, or if we might be able to come up with a plan B.
I don't know what direction those results advise, but I think I think that's something we can ask them to prioritize for us to help make a decision.
Yeah, I mean, right now we're luckily got that rain last week, and there's a little bit more in the forecast, but I think if, in the next week or something, if that could be determined that, actually you're in the green category and you can fire that back up, I think that would be a positive, and it would hopefully avoid greater calls and comments and more staff work than, if you're able to. So I just wanted to mention that, or ask. And you want to move on to the stormwater? Thank you. I had asked that be included, which I appreciate, and see that, the work is definitely continuing. It was really positive to see, you had given me the original inventory, but now I see that you did the preventive maintenance on some of the stuff, which I don't think we had been aware of. Maybe you mentioned it in an update, but it seemed that you're continuing to clean out some of the catch basins and getting some of that sediment out of there, and establishing, I hope, a method for making, that this is not a one-time, sort of just in the overall program of maintenance of airport infrastructure. I think it's very important.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah,
if I may, the maintenance and cleanup has been put on pause until the fall, but they're documenting that, as well as there was a change. I think it was a new drainage, some section that was added to it, that we're updating that as well.
Yeah, I would characterize that as that's correct. The item that we've had to put off is this spring for Area A, the runway 624 inspection. The season really just came on us too quickly with everything else. We were able to inspect all of our Area E structures, Area E being here in the parking lot. We'll get back to runway 624 basins, but they're initially categorized as being very, very good. And I don't know if you've seen this level of information before, Arthur, but this was the initial report. We have our maintenance report. We're still working on trying to reconcile everything into a very good digital final product. Right now we have inspection level sheets. We don't want to append inspection reports to the end of the document forever. We do want these with the actual basins, but some of these had 4 feet of sediment.
You're right. Yeah. That when I saw that, it's, that should never, be, and you're not, that's not the only one in the town. But at least for the airport that, we could control with an annual O&M, it should never get anywhere near that. And of course, the importance is that from both environmental protection, but it also greatly reduces the longevity of that infrastructure to get those sediments carried over from, the catch basin into the leaching facility. So, if we can do the PM, then long-term should really help with the, overall infrastructure costs, as well as being, I think, doing the environmental rate thing. So thank you. I appreciate, getting this sort of pulled together to this level. I know that, it took a bit of work.
And Jacobs really did provide us with a good baseline document for that.
And then the grant opportunity, I saw the portions that you highlighted. I'll jump in and see if you think what I think. I'm not sure that we have something that it would be immediately where you highlight the new portion of things. I sort of hadn't, I was thinking back to maybe this is something that we could bring the veil back, the project that we had put so much work into about 10 years ago for the ramp electrification. Is there something that we could dust off and bring forward? But it seems that perhaps that's not going to be creative enough for something like a grant opportunity, that they're almost like back to when we were doing the solar, right? They're looking for something that is cutting edge if they're going to give you a grant, most likely. So I wouldn't want to see you put your effort or time into something unless we had like, hey, what about this new baffle, float, something that's, like gonna just absolutely, be a great idea. But I'll defer to you on that.
Yeah, no, you're correct, Arthur. I had a talk with one of our consultants who I feel like their goal is to find and get money for their clients, and his take was really that this is for a new or a novel technology. He seemed to think that it was a bid for testing PFAS destruction methods on airports. Trying to get someone willing to be a guinea pig for one of those yet unproven technologies.
Well, that might be worth discussion.
What about electrification charging for airplanes?
We didn't discuss that topic, but I think if it's something that is new or novel, just shooting from the hip here, integration of a solar battery component, or proving a Bowser concept, I think that would be the part to emphasize.
Yeah, because that net benefit is better than all of it. So, okay.
I was thinking about what if there was like I don't want to go to, like a noise cancellation, type of a program or something.
Yeah.
You put up, almost like giant AirPods line the fence that, I'm not trying to be, but but again, this is the kind of thing. But again, I don't think when you're as busy as you are, and with, unless we really had something, I think if, to your point about sort of PFAS destruction, that I hadn't thought of, something like that really is, maybe that, especially with, we have some funding authorized, and the ability to perhaps discuss with a consultant under a contract related to that, whether it's something that might be worthwhile. Right. I mean, clearly, if we're looking at the soil mitigation type costs, not as a huge uncertainty coming forward, that if there, and I was very interested by, I'm not sure if we talked about that. I think we might have hit on it once, but when I saw some of the requests to the RFIs, I think it was for the solid waste for the town, there was some talk about certain operators having PFAS destruction capability. So, again, I think we talked kind of as well, like, what do you do, with the soil? Is there a way that you run it through the machine and, it comes out, with those compounds broken down, so to speak, and inert or what have you. So I don't know, maybe it's worth a discussion, at least to mention that.
So I've personally been dismissive of the PFAS destruction technologies, but it's a conversation I can go back to our consultant and see if there's one or more that would be worth another look. The part that honestly gives me doubt is the $2.5 million sounds like a lot of money, but 50% of 2.5 million really means a lot for us. And the remaining of which doesn't seem to get us very far with any other projects. I think other than doing a pilot level or proof of concept kind of project, I don't think that this grant is really going to carry, Nantucket forward to a solution level approach. And that's part of the reason for my little bit of negativity, but I'd be certainly happy to take it back.
I hear you on that, but I see it as 2.5 from them, and the airport would have to kick in 2.5, obviously understanding that's not easily done. But now you're talking about a $5 million project. If the airport was gonna have to spend the $5 million anyway, perhaps, right? I mean, we're gonna be faced with the how we mitigate and handle, some of what's, coming at us. And right now, my understanding is that's essentially all locally funded anyway. So
That's
maybe,
correct.
I don't know. I think it might be worth a not in depth, but again, you guys could maybe look at it. I mean, what can you do with, say, 5 million that you got half of it, that if we're going to spend it anyway, we're going to have, I don't know what they're thinking about how we're going to do this, but you're not going to ship the soil off island. I don't think. I mean, or if you do, it's going to cost you probably a lot more than that. I mean,
No, the Weston was, had really indicated it's inside engineering solutions, which you're familiar with.
right. Okay. That's all I had. I see that did you have anything else on the grant, or I don't want to cut anybody off or anything else? I see that we do have a member of the public, Mr. Barksdale. Are you interested in making any comment, or?
No, I'm just observing
Okay.
the agenda came through and the noise abatement thing caught my eye, and so just want to sit in. Don't want to be. If that's inappropriate, tell me. I can go away.
No, absolutely not. It's a public, that's why we post these things and welcome feedback. More, I think, there's different points of view, obviously, on a lot of these things, as well as levels of concern. And so input is welcome for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that, Ms. Topham, I see you're still on. Is there anything that you want to add before we adjourn?
No, sir. I do agree with some of the things that you were saying, though, about the statue park, and I'm trying to think what other one, but we'll discuss it later. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you all for your time and effort to put this together. And I don't think there's anything specific beyond the few items that we discussed to see what we could do within your best of your ability.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll adjourn this subcommittee meeting at 1:48. Thanks.
Right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye now.